taking little bits of time to reflect can give us so much information. And I think that's what I try to do in those mindful breaks is break it down so it's really easy to gather this information. Otherwise, it can be really overwhelming.
You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode 191. Today, we're talking about mindful empowerment with Shonda Moralis. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clark-Field's Mindful Mama mentor. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting membership, and I'm the author of the upcoming new book, Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Welcome back. I am so glad you are here today. This is a very special episode with a dear friend of mine that I am so excited to share with you. Shonda Moralis is a women's empowerment coach, a speaker, and a psychotherapist in private practice. And she believes that when women empower themselves and create life balance, they unleash the capability for incredible accomplishments, right? And which I completely in agreement with her. And she is the author of Breathe, Mama, Breathe, 5-Minute Mindfulness for Busy Moms. And her new book is Breathe, Empower, Achieve, 5-Minute Mindfulness for Women Who Do It All, and is now available. So I'm so excited for you to jump into this conversation with us. Really, if you feel like you're like on that hamster wheel, you're being pushed and pulled around by life, and it can feel like when you're in that place, like that change is really insurmountable. But Shonda really shows us how to empower ourselves with bit by bit, to reach our goals just bit by bit over time, taking those steps, which is, this is completely in accordance with the way I believe change should be done. The best changes are done in this sort of bit by bit way, I think. And some takeaways and things I want you to listen for, are that if we're always putting out fires, we're really just living reactively, and that we can build self-confidence and practice that in really tiny bites. That, of course, meditation gives us a foundation of awareness and insight. So I'm so excited for you to join us for this conversation. Before we jump in, I want to let you know that right now, the Raising Good Humans live event is happening. It's starting today, I believe, on the day this comes out, on October 22nd, going live with Oren Sofer, talking about how to stay focused on what really matters. We are also going to have later today, Julie King and Joanna Faber, and we're going to be talking about how to get little kids to listen. So we have 9 amazing interviews with amazing teachers and guests, including Hal Runkle, Kathy Adams, and we're all concluding with Dr. Laura Markham on November 4th. So this is a really exciting event. I hope that you will be part of it, and you can join us by joining up at raisinggoodhumansbook.com/live. That's raisinggoodhumansbook.com/live. And we will have a link to it at mindfulmamamentor.com, but I invite you to check it out and join us. All of these live interviews will be up for a limited time, and it is to help us get super excited about the pre-launch of Raising Good Humans. I'm so excited about this. Raising Good Humans is now available for pre-order. You can order it now. And if you do, you can be if you want to be like an amazing super gold star supporter, you can order it and get excited about it and then read it when it comes out and leave an amazing review on Amazon, which is where those reviews need to be left, right? So yeah, it's all happening. It's all really exciting. And I hope you'll join me for the Raising Good Humans live event to help us get excited and kick off the book. Woohoo! So exciting. All right. So whether you are here in real time or here in the future, I am so happy to be in your ears. I'm so excited for you to be part of this conversation. So join me at the table as I talk to Shonda Moralis. Shonda, thanks so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Hunter.
I'm glad you're here. I'm excited about your new book coming out right around now, Breathe, Empower, Achieve. And you've been in the mindfulness world, and you have another book about helping moms and parents or people fit in mindfulness into small little bits of time, 5 minutes and things like that. So before we kind of dive into some of the things you say in the book, let's kind of define what is the problem that people, why, what is going on that we need to like kind of find these teeny bits of time to chill out. So because there's a big problem with burnout right now, right? And anxiety and overwhelm. And you know this because you see this in your patients. So tell me more about this.
Right. So, and that's kind of where the shift, I wrote Breathe, Mama, Breathe for busy moms. And the shift came when I started my younger son, my daughter's was in high school and my son was going into first grade and in school age. So I had a little more time to kind of be out of the trenches in parenting and kind of look up and see like, how did I want to make a bigger difference in the world? And I think that can happen sometimes when we kind of get out of the trenches with the little ones. So, and what I was seeing and that we're on this hamster wheel of busyness and high achieving women, especially. So whether they're moms or not moms, this idea of not having any balance and always putting out fires and just feeling like there's, very little intention in the direction that we're going in our days. So exactly that idea of burnout and overwhelm and just putting out those fires and not allowing themselves to dream or have any space or time in our day to think about what we really want, how we really want to maybe look out to the bigger world and see where we can contribute and to really be our best selves and live bigger. So that was the premise for the book.
You say, and I see this all the time, this like always on the wheel of busyness, always putting out fires. Even I think, even when we go on vacation, right? Like, it's like maybe you get 7 days, and that's like, but it goes by in a snap and you're going somewhere and then you're coming back and then you're adjusting. And it's always this quickness, the speed of our lives is insane, but you say this very, very little intention. So tell me a little bit more about that. Like very, very little. What do you mean by very little intention?
Meaning, so if we don't pause every so often and have those little bits of space created deliberately in our day, and I believe strongly in just these 5-minute pauses or intentional, what I call mindful breaks throughout the day, then we are just reacting to anything that comes our way. And there's no priority, there's no prioritization happening. So it's sort of like we aren't being deliberate. We are just allowing things to happen to us. We're getting pulled along in the flow of things. And before we know it, years pass and you're like, well, I'm just still in the same job. Maybe it's stagnant. Maybe I'm not living my dream. I feel like there's something missing here. Is this all there is? And I see that a lot with women too, kind of getting to that place where I don't know, I just feel like there's something missing and there needs to be something more to life kind of thing. So when our kids are little and we're keeping them alive, and that's a very all-consuming process. And then when they are a little more self-sufficient and we have more time and, not necessarily moms either, just women in general, being able to delineate what do I want and what's important to me and where are my strengths. And also another piece of this book is getting out of our own way. So confidence and assertiveness and recognizing. So the more we have, we can be calm and aware. So I can tell you a little bit about the book. The Breathe, Empower, Achieve framework is the breathe practices are about calm and awareness. So when we don't take that pause, if we hop out of bed in the morning, hop on that hamster wheel, and we are going until we crash into bed at night, there's no time. There's no time to pause and reflect on what is happening, what I want, is this the direction I want to head? And we're not calm enough to even have that awareness. And we know about the different parts of the brain and with fight or flight and living on that low level fight or flight. So the breathe practices help us calm and be more aware, have that insight. The empower practices are about stepping out of our own way, recognizing where we put up barriers, assertiveness, confidence, and recognizing our strengths. And the achieve practices are about goal setting and vision and values. And so being very deliberate in how we achieve success, whatever that looks like for us.
So you're saying we are in a chaotic world. We're in, a crazy busy world, but it doesn't have to take like a week away in Bali to, with a coach to figure out what you want to do in your life. Like you can start to chip away little bits at the stress. We can chip away little bits at the empowering ourselves. And then even in little bits at kind of getting to these goals. So I was thinking about this, that breathe piece, of course, has to be in there because I was thinking about this and I was thinking about building self-confidence, right? And this is something that we could all use almost universally, and maybe not all of us, but most of us. And I was thinking about the idea of like, well, because as human beings, we have this wired for survival nervous system, that has its tendency to see the negative, has its tendency to towards anxiety and things like that. And we live in a chaotic world. Like the world it feels like there's, in the news, all these things going on with our nervous system. The idea of building, how do we do that? How do we build self-confidence with a nervous system that is wired for just survival and stay alive and see the negative?
Right. Well, for me, it's this combination of the breathe practices, the calming. We have to learn how to access that bit of calm with 5 minutes of meditation, with a few sprinkled mindful breaks throughout the day that calm our nervous system down. So it's just that ongoing practice. And then we can recognize our patterns. So we have a little more insight and we can hone our strengths and also recognize where we are perceived weaknesses. Are they really weaknesses? Are they weaknesses that we can learn to strengthen, learn to adapt? So I'm not sure. So
yeah. So I guess that piece, that there's that mindfulness piece there in there that is saying, even though, we can work with this nervous system to calm our nervous system down. And then with that in place, then we're able to sort of build self-confidence. What are some practices you have to build self-confidence?
Right. So a few that I love. One, some of them I borrowed from some of my clients. And of course, I give them credit in the book, but one I love is called the Unmute Yourself Mindful Break. And that is, this woman talked about, she works in a company where she does a lot of video conferences, and she would always put herself on mute. And she was getting frustrated. She was working hard and she had a lot to contribute, but she wasn't moving up in the company, and she really was struggling with that. So she talked with a mentor, and the mentor said, look, you need to unmute yourself. You need to speak up in meetings. You have a lot to say. So she was terrified. And she said, every single meeting, I literally unmuted myself and would make myself contribute. And I did have a lot to say. So I think it's this idea of that it's such a great analogy or metaphor for how we do mute ourselves, especially as women. And there's so much research around that too. So that's one, just really being deliberate about speaking up, whether, when we think we do have something to say, and kind of pushing through that, which does build confidence. The more we do it, it builds upon itself. So that's one practice.
Another I love that. Would you recommend, like, I want to hear the other one, but would you recommend, like, say somebody is struggling with that and is working on speaking up, would you say, like, maybe they focus on this for like a week or two at a time? Like, this is in a way of just being intentional. Like, this couple weeks, I'm going to be practicing this, even though it feels difficult, etc.
Definitely. So it's a great question. And both of my books, how I see them being most helpful is to, whether you are meditating or not, to get back into or start a 5-minute daily meditation practice just to lay that foundation of what that feels like so we can access that and build upon that if you'd like. And then sprinkling our day with mindful breaks and starting with just one. So yes, absolutely. Try one for a week. So it becomes more of a habit. And if you need to take that for 2 weeks or however you want to do that, but to really, they become integrated into our lives. So we don't even recognize their habits then. And then we're not even recognizing that we're doing it as much anymore. It's just effortless. We don't need to give it as much thought. So once we establish that, so yeah, layering them up, that's the best way to go.
Awesome.
Right. Yeah. So another one, 2 more, that recognizing our inner bully. And sometimes we can even personify her. In the book, I call mine Marge, and she's kind of looks like the Simpson version of Marge, but she's she can be really bitchy. and she can be, so recognizing when Marge shows up in my life, usually when I'm tired or if I'm, really stretching out of my comfort zone, then she's kind of like that voice of self-doubt, that voice of yeah, I don't know if you can really do this. I don't know about this. And recognizing that that's protective, and that's it can be helpful, but we don't need to follow what she's saying. We can kind of say, well, thank you for being here and thank you for cautioning me, and I can still do this anyway. So being aware of that and not just falling under that, because what we know is that when we meditate and we recognize this more, we have so many thoughts, and what we do is we tend to turn thoughts into facts. So the more we can recognize that's just a thought and then question first, that's where that insight comes in. Is it a fact or not? And recognize when it's our inner bully talking. And then go ahead.
I have a question for you about that inner voice and that inner negative voice that we have. Sometimes we are, we're given advice to follow our instincts and to listen to our inner wisdom and things like that, but not listen to this inner bully. How do we differentiate between an inner voice that might be an inner voice of wisdom that's like a strong, helpful gut experience versus that voice of fear, the negativity, the inner bully?
Yeah, great question. There's a mindful break for that too, which is, it's called Do Not Fear Mistakes. There are none. And I talk about that, which is this, again, getting quiet. So that's where the breathe practices come back in. It's all so circular, the way they all interplay. When we get quiet, we can recognize and start to familiarize ourselves with those body sensations and recognize when there's that tightening or that subtle discomfort showing up somewhere in our body. And sometimes it's super subtle. And sometimes we know, like you're saying, we may be completely on the right track and it still feels really scary, because that's kind of how it should feel when we're doing something new and out of our comfort zone, even though it's maybe the best way to go. So it does take time and practice. And I share an example of when I didn't follow that. So I was making a jump into joining a group practice. They had reached out to me a few years back, and I was out for a bike ride a week before I was ready to start. And I had given up my own psychotherapy practice that I had for about 10 years, was joining a group, closing up shop. It's a big change. And I felt like I was almost going to have a panic attack out on my bike ride. And I came home and I said to my husband, I don't know, I just really am having doubt about this. I can't tell if it's just like you're saying, is it just fear making a change? Or is this telling me this is a really bad idea? And so, he talked to me and he kind of talked me down. But what I later recognized after just being there for a few months, it was pretty clear, yes, that was my intuition talking, and I didn't heed it because it was only a week out and it was a lot of those things. So sometimes we know it, we squish it down and don't follow it. So it takes practice. So sometimes we get it right. Sometimes we can recognize this is my inner wisdom giving me information. This is just my inner bully. But it's that ongoing practice of awareness to tease out, which is the kind of the helpful warning that really we should heed, and which is just good fear, healthy fear, I should say. That is, that kind of comes with stretching ourselves. I can't give this is how it will be for you, Hunter. It's different for each of us, which is what makes it so interesting and challenging. But the more we can recognize and practice that on ourselves, the more we become familiar with it.
Yeah, I guess it's like there's a, if you're going on stage to speak and you have been wanting to do that, and there's that feeling right before you go on where it's incredibly scary, and then, but you do it anyway because that's kind of stepping out of that comfort zone, and that's kind of a healthy disregarding of that fear, right? And then there's that. But yeah, you said, and you just said it a minute ago, but this idea of do not fear mistakes, there are none. What do you mean by that?
Meaning that I believe, and that, sometimes, so I could look at that my example of being on my bike and changing and giving up my private practice and jumping into something that very early on was clear, this is not a good idea. This is a bad match for me. And that was terrifying because I had to start all over again with my own practice, building that up, and just even acknowledging that that wasn't a great fit. So I could look at that as a mistake, but what happened out of that is I had free time, building up my caseload there. I started writing blog posts and I thought, I have a workbook here. Maybe I have a book here. That's how I ended up writing my first book. So I feel like there is always, it stretched me in a different way and I was probably going to just stay pretty complacent in my own practice. And it made me kind of shift into a different direction that has been awesome. So that's what I mean. I think there's always growth there and we can learn from it. And, it's how we frame it.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it is. It's like kind of how we look at things, and it's hard to, part of that I wonder about is kind of having reminders, like having reminders of that, I love this, what you said, like, do not fear mistakes. There are none. And sometimes I just need that reminder. Right. And I can get that reminder from other sources, and that this idea that, it really is in how I look at it. It really is in how I frame it. If I can see that, I can approach the world as if the world is for me, or if I can approach the world as if things are happening to me. And it sounds like kind of what I'm getting from you from all of this is kind of as far as this empowerment, right, is like a shift towards being in the place of life is happening to me and I'm being reactive to all of these things, to saying, to shifting our mindset to a place of this is happening for me. This has benefits to me. I can kind of work with this in some way.
Right. Work with it. And I can kind of create my own life. I can be the author of my own life, of how I want that to look. So that's the achieve piece, which is, you kind of have these other pieces in place. And if we're not confident or assertive, then we're going to block ourselves. So then, we need to kind of develop that. And of course, these are lifelong practices. But the achieve practices are then, now what? So I can make things happen. And being able to see that the more we do things and the more we prioritize and really focus on how to break down those goals and those dreams into really tiny micro action steps, then we build upon that. And that does build confidence. So they all kind of, those pieces circle back together: the breathe, empower, achieve.
So with that achieve piece, do you have practices for visualizing what you want to achieve? Like, what is it that you want? What is it that you're looking for?
Right. There are short mindful breaks to help us uncover that. So talking about using our magic wand, what kind of, if I could give you any kind of superpower sort of thing, what would you take? And that kind of is information of what you're craving. And then how do you break that down so you can make that happen? Even talking about, and goal setting, of course, too, how to make really tiny little, I call micro action steps, so that it's so easy, we can't fail to kind of reach our goals. And identifying even with what I call the green-eyed monster mindful break, which is when I recognize I'm feeling envious of someone, what is that? What's the information in there that I can say, it's not really what appears to be on the surface. It's more about I'm craving a little more downtime in my life, or I'm craving a little bit more something, so it's not always what it first appears, but having, just taking little bits of time to reflect can give us so much information. And I think that's what I try to do in those mindful breaks is break it down so it's really easy to gather this information. Otherwise it can be really overwhelming. We feel like, well, I'm supposed to have a purpose or I'm supposed to do something, but I have no idea what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. So you can break it down into smaller bits. I think about that sometimes, like sometimes I think about the big picture of the world and I get very frustrated with the way our society is and how challenging it is for people and the lack of support and things like that, which I really believe in. And then on the other hand, I also believe, like, as you're saying, like there are things that we can do to kind of make it towards our vision of whatever that is. And, we have to take that step back and be intentional, like you said, and have that vision in the first place. Like we can't just shut ourselves off from that vision and say it's impossible. So if your vision is to, work fewer hours and have more time off and, have 4 weeks to go somewhere or whatever that is, it doesn't make sense to block yourself off from that vision, because the truth is many things are possible in this life. Almost anything is possible. And we don't know, we're not going to get towards any of that if we don't know where we're going. So if we have a vision, like for instance, my husband, we had a vision for him to be working less. And so just over the course of many years, maybe a decade, when there was a choice point, we knew that was our vision. So we made the choice towards that vision, and we kept making the choice towards that vision. And now he works 4 days a week, which is great, and we have simplified our life. So it's wonderful. We can do that. And sometimes, I can see that people might look at and say, oh, that's so wonderful. You have this amazing thing. And, I wish that were possible for everyone. And I wish that were possible for everyone too. And while it may not be in this moment, you could say, okay, at some point, this is my vision. And then when you have these choice points, just always keeping that kind of North Star in mind, and it sounds like that's what you're helping people do here, is to, what is that vision? How do we just break it down really small to bit by bit to make it towards that, whatever that is. So what did you achieve in this way? Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So it's just a couple, if we can come back to that, just a couple of things of what you said. I hope I remember. Oh, shoot. It may be gone now, but you were saying, and one of the practices is called, it's about our values. So finding your inner compass, and it's exactly what you're talking about, which is like, what are your deepest held values? And every time we can have that really sort of in our back pocket, any decision we need to make, we filter it through our values to say, is this going to get, for you, it was having more time together, it sounds like, or more free time, or whatever that was, about having less work, but more something for your family or your husband. And so that was, like you said, it is, we get so stuck because it feels too big and too overwhelming. But the more we can just say, well, each time I am faced with a choice, I can just nudge it just one little direction in this way. It can happen. And I agree with you. Like, we can make so many more things happen than we realized are possible. So yes.
Yeah. Then we allow ourselves to imagine. I think sometimes, like, we don't allow ourselves to imagine, I guess, because it can be hard to be with where we are if we have this desire for something different. Do you think that's why we don't allow ourselves to kind of go there in some way?
I'm sorry, I missed what you said. Because of a desire for what?
So if we don't allow ourselves, I think a lot of times we don't allow ourselves to have a vision of what we want or what we desire, because it's kind of American puritanical roots. We feel like wanting more is wrong or bad somehow, or it makes it hard for us to be in what we have, if it's not exactly what we want at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, there may be a piece of that. What I see more often, though, is I don't think I can make that happen. Like, that's not possible. And these are why. So when we start to dream big, we also our mind comes up with all these ideas as to why that can't happen. And sometimes, there are some very real barriers there. But just like you're saying, if you would have said 10 years ago, okay, to your husband, you need to stop working so much now and you need to work 4 days a week now, he'd be like, well, yeah, I'm going to give you my whole list why that cannot happen right now. And it couldn't right then. So, but if you can hold that vision, hold their values, what is most important to you, and then nudge everything in that direction over time. So it's about first letting ourselves dream big and without letting all the barriers get in the way, and then figuring out backwards kind of how we get there. And knowing that it can take a lot of time. And sometimes we have to accept things, sometimes a ship has sailed, and that dream may not happen, and that's okay. But how do we get a piece of it? How do we get a little bit of that so it feels like that's nourishing us too? So
yeah. So do you have exercises to help people figure out what are those values? As you go. That's great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. I want people to breathe and empower and achieve. I want women to be doing these things. Did you see sort of, you obviously saw a need for this, maybe among your clients, your friends, yourself? Where did you see this?
All of the above. Yes. And I think, you hear about people, when we write books, we write them for ourselves too. And I definitely feel that way. I write the books that I need to read, and I wish I had. And so yes, and yes, I see it all over the place, which gets me very excited that I can put this out there and hope that it does help us all to, and a big piece of this is, can we empower each other? And when we feel more compassionate towards ourselves and more grounded and happier, then we are more apt to look out and say, how can I help you? And how can I help you? And helping each other and empowering each other, because we all have these gifts. We all have so much that we can do. And whether it's collectively or individually, we can support each other. And I love that.
Yes. Amen. So I see. So these are exercises, but these are also practices, right? Like this, I just want to check in with you that this is, as far as I see, our nervous system and our wired for survival nervous system, this is just the way it stays. We can rewire to a certain extent, but this is something that's not like you get it done this year and then you're like, I'm great forever, right? Like this is something that you're continuing to work on. You found that to be true in your own life? And
it shifts. Go ahead.
No. I'm just wondering if it is, have you found that to be true in your own life? That these practices or do you, I guess maybe I'm asking sometimes even though I know they're practices, part of my mind is like, oh yeah, I should be great. I should be good forever now. There's this wishful thinking part of my brain. Right. And then I'm like, oh yes.
Oh yes, I'm human. And but I think that keeps it fun and interesting. And definitely as we grow and shift and move into different seasons in our parenting or our lives or our careers, whatever that looks like, it's always going to shift what we need, what we are strong at, what we're kind of a little bit more deficient in. And so it is completely, as all of this is an ongoing practice, but that can also keep it really exciting and interesting.
So what are the practices you keep in your own daily life?
Well, definitely meditation in the morning. And it's been, since my little guy who's 7, it's still been a short 5 to 15 minute meditation. It used to be 30 minutes way back. So again, maybe in a different season of my life, I will get back to that. And I hope I do. So definitely that foundation of meditation. And then sometimes I will journal. I switch it up because sometimes I don't like to do the same thing all the time. Sometimes I'll journal and spend 5 minutes working on kind of the dreaming, the allowing myself to dream, because if sometimes I might go through 6 months or 9 months and I am working on a project and it's about the goal setting. So I may require that. If I am pushing myself out of my comfort zone, then I may need to kind of head back to some of those empower practices, which are more about the confidence, because self-doubt will surely show up when I'm trying to stretch myself into some new territory. So I don't know if I can give you, there's no formula I have. It's more, it's like a menu, and that's kind of how I see it is we're pulling from the different areas all the time.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so you, like me, believe in that foundation of meditation, of mindfulness. Tell me from your own point of view why that is so essential and why that's a foundation that weaves throughout your work.
Again, I think it comes back to those pieces of awareness, insight, and calm. So when we are out of practice with, if we're not meditating every day, we, number one, forget that we we have this tool to use it when we're struggling. It is that ongoing baseline of calm, and it increases our awareness. I mean, we know this, so the insight that comes, and we can really fall into that hamster wheel living if we don't really protect that time and carve out that time, because it is that daily reminder of, oh yes, there's a different way. There's a different way to do this. There's a different way to be other than being on that hamster wheel, which is so pervasive all around us. That's why it's so crucial for me.
Well, Shonda, thank you so much. I'm so excited that Breathe, Empower, Achieve is coming out, and for everyone to check it out and get it, and break these big things down into small bites. We can do more than maybe we realize we can do. Why not? Why not? I mean, I think when I was thinking about what you were saying in the beginning about we're on the hamster wheel and living without intention and things like that. I thought of, I gotta remember her name because I quote her work so often. The hospice nurse who wrote the 5 Regrets of the Dying, which was now
Yes.
but it was a blog post. But the number one regret of the dying, and she sat with many dying people. But the number one regret of the dying was, I wish I had lived a life that was true to me, not one that others had in mind for me. And I think about, what you're doing and what you're saying with this book is that, even you can do this in just a little bit by bit kind of way. And I think that's really kind of nice, rather than throw aside your day job and everything, it's like, yes,
right.
Instead, let's take these tiny steps, and tiny steps can really add up. Yeah,
exactly. Yes. And my hope is that everybody finds it accessible for wherever they are, on that whole continuum of wherever we are in our balance and how mindful we are in our lives and how successful we feel we are, that there's always a place to go. And with those tiny, tiny action steps. Yes. So thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for the work you're doing. You're doing wonderful work in the world. I appreciate it. And I'm so glad we could get to talk. So go check out Shonda's book, Breathe, Empower, Achieve. I'm so excited about it. Thanks so much, Shonda.
Thank you, Hunter.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to the Mindful Mama podcast. I love what Shonda has to say. We can't continue to just be putting out fires. Like, we can be more deliberate about how we're living our lives, even if it's just a tiny little change, right? We can do this. Yes, you can. You can do it. I believe in you. And I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that if you are listening to this live, you can jump into the Raising Good Humans Live event that is going on right now. It's starting on the day this podcast comes out. And you can join it at raisinggoodhumansbook.com/live. That's raisinggoodhumansbook.com/live. And if you want to, of course, please do buy the book. Pre-order it at raisinggoodhumansbook.com. That is an incredible way to get all the great lessons that I put together from so many years and that go into the Mindful Parenting membership all in one place. So go check that out at raisinggoodhumansbook.com and join us at the live event. So just add a little /live at the end of that, and you can join us for the 9 amazing speakers there. All right. So I will be checking in with my my speakers soon. We'll be jumping into those interviews just in a few moments for me here. And so I hope I'll see you there. And if not, I'm just wishing you a great week. Even if you are there, of course, I am wishing you a great week too. I'm wishing you peace and joy and some inspiration this week. And I'll be looking for it too. I'll be looking out for it. I'll be like kind of that's what I do. I just kind of go through my days. I look for the peace. I look for the joy. I look for the inspiration. And I'm not always in a great mood by far. And, you know, on those days, I still look for the peace. I still look for the joy. I look for the inspiration, right? We have to, and you know, what we train ourselves to look for, that's what we find more and more. So you look for it too with me, okay? All right. I'm wishing you a great week. Namaste.